In 1930, a young astronomer named Clyde Tombaugh spotted a shifting point of light on a photographic plate. The fastest craft ever launched is about to reach this last unexplored and unseen world, Pluto. On July 14th, New Horizons will zip past the former 9th planet and its moons. Nobody really knows what to expect out there.
Half the people in America are too young to remember Voyager. They either weren't born or they were too young to have any memory of it except in a textbook. They've never seen a point of light turned into a planet literally overnight by a spacecraft pulling up for the first time. Nothing like this is planned to ever happen again by any space agency on the Earth.
Right now we're going to transform this little pixelated blob into a real world with complexity and diversity and who knows what.
We have some very crude images of what Pluto looks like from the Hubble Space Telescope, but really we have almost no idea of what it actually looks like. We have a lot of ideas of what it might look like. All of those pictures that we have in our heads and that we think we know what Pluto looks like, we're just going to throw all those out the window and replace them with reality, which is the most fun thing you can do.
New Horizons lifted off from Cape Canaveral on January 19th, 2006. It was designed to be simple, practical, reliable, and fast. Very fast.
The spacecraft, in order to get to Pluto, had to be launched on the largest rocket that was available and making the payload small so you get the maximum energy injected into this spacecraft. It took the Apollo astronauts 3 days to get to the moon. The New Horizons spacecraft passed the moon in 9 hours.
A year later, New Horizons passed Jupiter, gaining enough speed to cut 3 years of travel time. But reaching Pluto still required 9 years and 3 billion miles. The longest journey yet for any spacecraft to reach its primary target.
You know, we've gone through this long, extended cruise to get out to Pluto because it's so far away. Pluto's always been in the future. It's always been sort of this abstract concept of, you know, it's been a PowerPoint, timelines and whatnot. Now it's really starting to reveal itself with the instruments. And it's like, wow, we really are almost there.
We're going exploring. We've never been to this type of planet. We've never been to the Pluto system. And one of the great lessons of planetary science is that the first missions to Mars discovered completely unexpected things like river valleys. The first missions to Jupiter discovered that there were volcanic moons and moons with oceans on the inside, and no one predicted that really. So we've learned from experience that you go in with your eyes wide open, the most powerful suite of instruments. After all, we're not planning to rewrite any textbooks. We're planning to write them from scratch.
What we know about Pluto can be put on a postcard. It is a pipsqueak of a world smaller than Earth's moon. Pluto is vastly different from the rocky terrestrial planets of the inner solar system and the gas giants farther out.
Pluto is like a little mini solar system. We've just discovered all of these other moons over the past decade, 5 moons plus Pluto. Who would have thought that such a little object that's only 3/4 the size of the Earth's moon would have a little mini solar system running around it?
The first couple moons they discovered, we thought, oh wow, that's pretty cool. Now Pluto has 3 moons. But when they got to the other 2 moons, we were thinking, oh no, this might be a problem. Maybe there's a debris field. Maybe there's a ring system. We just don't know.
It's one lone, plucky little spacecraft with no backup, potentially flying into harm's way.
The Pluto system is tipped on its side, like a target facing the sun.
The inclination of Pluto is interesting right now. So it almost looks like a big dartboard, and we have this lance coming at it and going right through the dartboard.
New Horizons will speed through it at 10 miles a second, crossing the orbit of Charon, Pluto's largest moon. The thought and the hope is that Charon's gravity will have cleared away any nearby dust and debris.
If the spacecraft were hit by something even the size of a rice pellet, it could pierce into the spacecraft and potentially cause it to stop functioning. It would be like colliding with a brick at 60 miles an hour.
It takes 4.5 hours for a signal from Earth to get to Pluto. During the flyby, New Horizons will be on autopilot, out of contact with the Earth, as alone as any robot has ever been.
With the New Horizons spacecraft, everything is fixed, so it can only point in one direction at a time. During the closest approach, there's very little time where it's pointed at the Earth. It's mostly pointed at that target that we've been spending 9 years to get to.
One of the things about New Horizons is that it's carrying the most sophisticated battery of instrumentation that's ever been carried on a first reconnaissance mission to a planet in history. On board this payload are 7 scientific instruments. They're very highly miniaturized, very high-tech. When you turn them all on at once, together, all 7 draw 28 watts, which is about a half a light bulb, something like a night light, and yet they pack tremendous power.
New Horizons is carrying a few mementos into the depths of space and out of the solar system, including a small container of Clyde Tombaugh's ashes.
I think, spiritually speaking, in terms of our quest and understanding our place, is that this is a human endeavor. And Clyde Tombaugh discovered this world, and that he didn't live to actually see the mission, but a tiny portion of his ashes are on board the spacecraft. He's the first human remains to be sent out of the solar system, and in a beautiful way, it connects the human discovery of this world with that very human articulation of a piece of engineering that's going to bring home the science. And in that way, I think it's rather poetic that a little bit of Clyde is going to sail past Pluto on July 14th.
But the reunion with his world could be bittersweet. From the beginning, there had always been something odd about the 9th planet. Then a Caltech astronomer named Mike Brown discovered a world larger than Pluto in the Kuiper Belt, an ocean of comets and icy worlds beyond Neptune. If Pluto was a planet, then so was this new object, which he named Eris, after the goddess of discord.
In my mind, a planet is one of the small number of objects in a planetary system that dominates the planetary system. In our solar system, the classification is really simple. You have these 8 that are much more massive than anything else, and they're in these beautiful circular orbits, and everything else in the solar system is small and in these crazy inclined or eccentric orbits, and it's all because anytime a small object gets close to a planet, it gets scattered off into space in some crazy orbit. It makes much more sense to call Pluto and Eris, which is bigger than Pluto, and I found it makes much more sense to classify these with the Kuiper Belt, where they truly belong, than to artificially and sort of nostalgically continue to consider them planets.
Less than a year after New Horizons was launched, the International Astronomical Union voted for the first time on the definition of a planet. It's round, it goes around the sun, and it has cleared everything else out of its path. A definition that demoted Pluto to a dwarf planet.
But this is basically a broken definition, because even if you put the Earth where Pluto orbits, it's not large enough to clear that zone, simply because that zone is further out and way bigger than all the zones closer to the sun.
It's true, if you placed Earth there or Mercury there, they wouldn't clear out their orbital zone, but they wouldn't form there to begin with. Pluto is so obviously not a planet that it's just so surprising to me that this debate is still ongoing.
The compromise was, to call it a dwarf planet, and there has been a consensus. Everybody calls Pluto a dwarf planet.
In my heart, Pluto is always a planet. That's what I learned, and I'm sticking with that.
In the end, what we call Pluto will matter less than what it is. Once it was a moving dot. Soon we will glimpse its surface and its personality, and undoubtedly some of its mysteries. Pluto is the first of the ice worlds, and gatekeeper to a new realm of the cosmos, the Kuiper Belt, the ice cube tray of the gods.
The Kuiper Belt is this set of icy bodies beyond the orbit of Neptune. It's this region where if all those bodies could have coalesced into a single planet, they would have loved to do that, but they didn't have time to do that before Neptune came along and disrupted everything. So instead of having a planet out there beyond Neptune, we just have this debris in this big ring.
So we're really looking at a gateway to hundreds of worlds, if not more, that are out there that we can look close up and personal with for the first time. And that's what's incredibly exciting, that this is really helping us understand what that inventory of stuff that form the solar system out there is.
New Horizons will have one chance to study Pluto up close. Every precious second of the flyby, every pirouette of the spacecraft to scan Pluto and its moons has been planned, programmed, and rehearsed.
So the key defining characteristic of this mission is that it's one shot. You have one flyby. It's very fast. It had to be fast to get there in a reasonable amount of time. And so we want everything to go flawlessly, right? The first time, the only time.
If New Horizons succeeds, it will herald the end of an era of exploration.
I like to think of New Horizons as the Everest of planetary exploration, one of those signal events in human history when we really put a capstone on something, in this case, a 50-year quest to explore our own solar system, something that sounds like science fiction, but it's not. We've actually done this as a country, and it's a legacy of not just exploration, but a body of knowledge that will last as long as society lasts, as long as there are textbooks, as long as human beings look back on their own history and say, what great things have we done?
It's important to have an opportunity like the Pluto flyby to remind ourselves that we are actually quite capable of doing extraordinary and beautiful things. We are the beings that develop the languages of mathematics and science, that we are the beings that established a program, a systematic, methodical program of exploring our cosmic neighborhood. And that's mind-blowing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so that's why I love planetary flybys and I love events like this. It's an opportunity to say, okay, maybe there's hope.
New Horizons will watch the sun set and rise on Pluto for the first and only time. A momentary eclipse 3 billion miles away. After Pluto, we will have seen all the known worlds for the first time. Our generation of humans will always be remembered for discovering the wonders of the solar system. What will the next generations be remembered for? A universe is waiting.